Order. I think Del Rey is gone and Mary is gone at this time.
Mary's calling in. She's on the phone.
Calling in. Are they on then?
Yeah, Mary's on.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williams? Mr. Hendrickson? Yes. Mr. Paulson? Mr. Campbell? Mr. Wayland? Dr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Here.
Mr. Grinberg? Mrs. Sherling?
Here.
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Steen?
Here.
Mr. Thorsted?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes. Here. You have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meetings?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
PMC
Aye.
report, Martin?
If I can figure out how to work the machine. Mayor Mahoney, members of the board, this month's report is hopefully short and sweet. The first two items have been on the PMC report for the last 3 months. That's to continue to support Minnesota and the Corps in advancing the EIS, both EIS for the federal and the Minnesota supplemental EIS, and to continue to work with Minnesota DNR and other parties to advance the permit application review. We're down to the point where we're probably within 60 days or so of having an outcome around those efforts, so looking forward to that. You held a successful joint North Dakota State Water Commission Water Topics Legislative meeting on September 26th. That was right after the last board meeting. Members of the board here and others made some very well-received presentations to that body. And just last week hosted a tour and a special board meeting for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Head of Civil Works, General Scott Spellman. It was a pleasure to hear a reaffirmation of the support of the Corps for the project and their interest in moving it forward. Also, the President signed Word of 2018 into law, and obviously it specifically included the provision on deed-restricted lots. I think Senator Hoeven made that comment last week when General Spellman was here, so that was an important piece of legislation that helps the project move forward. And last week also held a project briefing for Cass County legislative candidates that was well received and I think well attended. We've initiated development of the financial and funding strategy associated with Plan B. In previous months, we've been reporting on cost estimate workshops and working the cost estimate. We're starting to look at the strategy for how to fund and finance the Plan B costs. And last but not least, awarded the contract for Work Package 42E, the 2nd Street South Closure and Pump Station project. In November, priority areas, many are generated around preparing for ultimately getting a positive news on the permit and the environmental approval. So initiating work planning for resuming land acquisition after permit and environmental approvals, advancing the land acquisition and mitigation outreach plan, given the time of the year, coordinating with City of Fargo, Cass County, and City of Moorhead on developing and planning pre-legislative session briefings, and also at the federal level as well. Reviewing the Phase 1 flowage easement study results. There's a draft that's been received, and so in the process of reviewing that. And construction will be starting on the project you awarded last month. And that's the summary of the action items. So I can move on into the summary of the budget.
Any questions? Okay.
These are the budgets that was reported yesterday at the Finance Committee. Overall program budget of $2.2 billion. Actual cost to date of $439,494,217, leaving your remaining program budget at $1,766,071,827. I believe there'll be a part of the Finance Committee report on adjusting that budget for moving forward. The 2018 cash budget, $82.6 million roughly in fiscal year 2018. Spent to date $30,606,436, leaving a balance of $51,947,958. And again, this is something that you've got some handouts in front of you that we'll talk about during the Finance Committee out report. Excuse me. that concludes PMC report.
Very good. Do you have the core report as well? Does core has a report today?
I do not have any report for the Corps.
Okay. Administrative legal? John, Mike? No? Public outreach committee report?
Yeah, for the,
Kevin?
Rocky's going to give us the report for that.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. The Public Outreach Committee met yesterday. I think Martin covered a number of the topics we discussed as a committee. Would like to point out that on the website, General Spellman's visit with Senator Hoeven here as well, that's on the website and has been watched a number of times, but I think a lot of good things were said about future funding and WIFIA and P3, and so if anybody's interested, it is on there to watch. We're also working with legislative candidates and other candidates coming up. I think we're 12 days out from the election. Once the election happens, I'm sure we'll have another round of briefings with the local cities and counties as they tend to do before the legislative session starts. In addition, we'll have some new congressional delegation members, at least one anyways, and so we'll work with them to get them up to speed on what we're facing in 2019, and I think there'll probably be some trips out to DC planned to help with that effort. And then lastly, some effort's gone into, not just at the Outreach Committee, but the Land Management Committee and at the Joint Board to talk about a land acquisition outreach plan as we anticipate some sort of decision coming up in the next few months. We want to know what we're planning to do on day one after we can go out and start acquiring land again. And so our outreach starts with that. And I think we're getting increasing level of inquiries from the public and from property owners. And so we have started drafting up an outreach plan for that we'll bring forward next month at the committees and through the Joint Board as well.
Very good. Business Leaders Task Force, Tom Dawson.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing new to report from the Chamber's standpoint or the task force.
I hear your Fuel the Future is going well. Is that right?
It is going well.
Good.
Yes. Yeah, we're very excited about it.
Good. Land Management, Mary, are you on?
Yes, I am. Land management did not meet this month. I think between Martin and Rocky, they've pretty much covered the activities that we've been working through. We do plan to meet next month, so kind of pencil that in.
Okay. Who's going to do Finance Committee?
I am. Here, it will not be as fast as the rest of the reports have been so far, so I've got a few things to go over. Martin's already covered the PMC report. At Finance, we had Kent Costin present us with the financial report. You have all the information in the packet in front of you. As Martin indicated, not a lot has happened this last month as far as activity. We have partway into your packet, you've got the summary budget report as far as revenues and expenses, and again, not a significant amount of activity in that area. There is a cash report here, trying to find the right page, indicating we have cash on hand of approximately $79,154,000 and a total net position after other assets and liabilities of $79,007,000. So we are still sitting on a fairly sizable piece of cash. With that, there's a listing of expenses. Following that listing of expenses for the period, as well as the year-to-date cumulative vendor payments since inception. And again, this not much changed since the last meeting because we just haven't had that much activity during that period of time. So the financial report, pretty vanilla, not a lot going on there, and PMC pretty much covered where we're at with year-to-date information. The next item to talk about is the financial audit. About a year ago, Finance Committee suggested that we should be looking at the future of an audit for the finances of the Diversion Authority, and we picked that up again this last meeting. And because of the situation where the Diversion Authority is really not creating its own set of financials, balance sheet, and revenue and expense statements per se, that at some point in time we're going to have to start doing that. And it's always been talked about once the system is in place, the director's in place, we've got personnel in place to basically do that. There'll probably be likely and very probable we should probably conduct an audit on an ongoing basis, probably in conjunction with the city's audit. The city currently does most of the records keeping, that type of thing. So we've spent, the Diversion Authority spent somewhere nearing $450 million to date, and really no audit procedures to catch up with that. And so the suggestion was that the Finance Committee form an audit committee within the Finance Committee and start working with the auditors for the city and find out what we have to do and what they can do currently to get us ready for an audit, perhaps as early as 12/31 of 19. And so the recommendation is to create that audit committee within finance, and then probably conduct some agreed upon procedures during fiscal 19, and then hopefully have that audit perhaps ready to go for 12/31/19. And so with,
Do you need action in regards to that?
I think it probably wouldn't hurt to have action to create the audit committee and move forward with working with the auditor.
Kevin, you want to make that?
Sure, I would move that they create the audit committee within the finance committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call it, or do all those in favor?
It's up to the board.
I think voice vote's okay, Mayor.
Voice vote.
Voice vote's fine.
Voice vote.
All in favor.
You say roll call?
Voice
Voice
vote.
Oh, voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Goes forward.
All right, thank you very much.
So we have to approve voucher approval AB.
Yep, that's the next item on our agenda, the voucher approval. There is some other information with regard to the committee action as well. I'll come back to that since you want to move on to the voucher approval. At this point in time, there is total expenditures or vouchers to approve of,
149,000.
thank you very much, $149,566.55.
I knew you would be precise.
Thank you.
Are you motioning that then?
That'd be a motion to approve the vouchers of the $149,566.55.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? Dave, did you have something? Or no, you just take it? Okay. That was for Dan. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
All right, moving back into some of the other business that we looked at in finance, there was two handouts, I think, in your places this, when you arrived, those long spreadsheets. And the first one is got the three gray columns on the right-hand side. We'll take a look at that. And it kind of ties back into the budget where we're at. And what we asked Martin to do was put together a realistic budget is where we're going to end up fiscal 18 at the end of the year. And so if you take a look at that first foldout that I referred to, that proposed the revised budget for 2018 over the second to the right-hand column, $82,554,394, and the remaining fiscal year budget as of August 31st is $54,076,15. All right, so that's where we're at through August 31st. If we go to the next fold-out, the other thing we asked to have done was where are we really going to end up at the end of the year as far as expenditures and that type of thing. So when we take a look at this, right, the middle three columns has the fiscal year 2018 paid through August 18, $28,478,379. Estimated expenditures for the remainder of the year, September through December, $10,661,799, for total estimated 2018 expenditures of $39,140,178. That will end up with a revised or a budget unexpended amount at the end of the year for fiscal 18 of $43,414,216. So we talked about, do we revise the budget, or do we just basically provide the information? It was determined that we should just provide the information where we're going to end up at. And this was important for us because then we move that on into the 2019 budget discussion. And so in order for us to find out where we're going to go with 2019, we really had to determine what do we have left to spend that was already appropriated or estimated in 2018. And again, part of that too was we have a lot going on with regard to 18, we're underspent, and then 19, typically we would have a budget basically pretty much in place or at least ready for review at about this time on a regular basis. But with the permit not being out, and we don't know the timing with all that happening, the recommendation of the Finance Committee is to basically prepare the 2019 budget for the first quarter only at this point in time. And that's why we put together the information, the unexpended for 18, so we have an idea what's left for 2018, what do we plan on spending in the first quarter of 19, and we'll know more, obviously, once the permit is approved and what the timing and what other hurdles we're going to have to jump through. But it just seemed like an exercise for us to really go through an entire budget for 19, really not knowing where we're going to be at. And so the recommendation, which I'd prefer a board approval for that, will be for the fiscal 2019 budget to prepare the first budget through March of 19. That's the recommendation I'm looking for.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Kevin?
Rick, can you, I haven't done a quarterly budget before in my time in public office, but is there, would there be concerns with when we go to, for example, the state and the feds, if we don't have a full-out budget for the year, does that become an issue?
And that's a good question. A couple of things that are holding up the budget, I think, for doing that. We can certainly go through the exercise, but it would really just be an exercise at that point.
I get that.
We don't know where the, what the cost of the project is yet, what the final costs are, and so how that's going to time through the year. And as far as actually the timing, the concern would be, are we going to do one? Yes, we're going to do one. Right now, this quarterly budget, first quarter budget, is really just a placeholder. So once we're able to take a look at the permitting, what we'll do is end up then going back and then creating a total fiscal 19 budget, but up until that point, we just didn't really know where we're going to be at. So there might be some questions, but I think we've got a pretty good rationales for why we're just doing a first quarter.
Thank you.
It'll get simpler as time goes on, Kevin.
Yeah, right.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Thank you. And the last item we have from finance is recommended contracting actions, and Martin's going to take the stand again and fill us in
8C.
on what's going on there. Yep.
In our packets. This place will stay up, it's just they're doing some minor things. Not an earthquake.
Okay. If it pleases the board, just a point of clarification on the last item, the budget. A question was raised in another forum about the remaining unspent dollars are primarily focused on the in-town flood improvement projects. And I think it's fair to point out that there was quite a bit of work done on those projects, as you well are aware. From a budget perspective, those were paid for by bond proceeds that were not part of the Diversion Authority's books, but part of the city of Fargo's. We are now at a point where the bond proceeds have been expended, and you will now start seeing the costs for all of the complementary flood protection projects running through the Diversion Authority books. And we've had that clarification requested of us in the past. So just a point of clarification there. Contracting items, two for information with respect to co-exec director, approved task order amendments, one for Terracon Consultants in the amount of $78,357, which is to add the work package 42E inspection and testing services and extend the period of performance through December of this year. And task order 27, amendment 1, river stage 37 feet planning, which is a $0 adjustment for moving money around inside that task order. And those are both executed by the co-executive directors. There is one contracting action for approval, and that is task order 17, amendment 6. This is for HMG to add the services during construction scope and budget for the recently awarded work package 42E contract, and to extend the period of performance through June 30th of 2020, and that is in the amount of $777,864, and that's will require an approval by the board based on the new policy of being over $150,000 from a task order perspective.
Rick?
Finance did review this at Finance Committee yesterday, and Finance's recommendation was to recommend approval by the board, so I'll move to approve this contract.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mrs. Schirling?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted? Yes. Mr. Jacobson?
Are we set on the 15th? Thanksgiving come up, is that why it's on the 15th, November, next meeting?
Wasn't there discussion yesterday at Finance to move the meeting?
Next meeting will be on the 29th, I understand it.
Okay, glad we made that correction.
I'll send out an updated meeting invitation tomorrow.
Okay.
And with that, for those who aren't here, the committee meeting's also been moved then to the 28th.
Okay.
Land, finance, and outreach as well.
All those in favor of moving it to the 29th, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any other discussion or items? Move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now, Dave, this is almost the shortest meeting we've had of this, but I cannot catch the commission meeting that you held in 22 minutes or whatever it was.
I admire your speed. Thank you.